On June 12, 2026, Elon Musk became the first trillionaire in the history of the world. His rocket company went public, and in a single morning, his net worth crossed $1,000 billion, nearly 4 times the next person on earth. The reaction was familiar: tax the billionaires. He should pay his fair share. How does the richest man alive pay so little? Reasonable questions. But they skip past something stranger than a rich man dodging his taxes. Because that $1 trillion isn't money. Not the way the number on your paycheck is money. What he has is stock, ownership of companies that the market now prices that high. He hasn't sold a share of it. The number climbed while he did nothing at all. And here's the puzzle. By the logic the entire tax system runs on, there's nothing here to tax. Not yet, possibly not ever. For more than a century, the tax code has split the world in two. One side, income, wages, salary, the money you are paid for your work. On the other side, capital, the things you own that can grow in value. A stock, a building, a company, and it treats them as opposites. Income is taxed the instant it exists. Yours come out at the top. Income tax, social security, Medicare, before it ever reaches your hands. But a gain on capital isn't taxed when it grows, only when you sell it. Until you do, in the eyes of the law, it isn't income at all. Musk hasn't sold. So, by the rules as written, the largest fortune in the human history is, for tax purposes, almost invisible. That's not the loophole he found. It's the foundation the whole system rests on. And whether you can even tax a fortune that never been sold isn't settled. Economists disagree, and 2 years ago it was in the front of Supreme Court. And this is where it stops being a story about one man. Musk is just the clearest example the world has produced. The same machinery made Bezos and Buffett and nearly every great American fortune. The $1 trillion just makes it impossible to ignore. So, the real question isn't why Musk is rich. It's what kind of money $1 trillion even is, if it's never been sold. And why the system taxes yours the moment you earn it and his almost never. So, where did that line come from? The one that splits your money from his. It's younger than you would have think. The federal income tax is only a little more than a century old. The 16th Amendment was passed in 1913, and almost immediately the government hit a deceptively hard question. What exactly counts as income? The answer got written in 1920 in a fight over a handful of shares of Standard Oil. A shareholder named Martel McComber owned stock in Standard Oil of California. The company issued a stock dividend. It handed existing owners new shares. McComber got more shares, and the government said, "That's income. Pay tax on it." She disagreed. She hadn't received $1. She owned the exact same slice of the exact same company. It had simply been cut into more pieces. Her wealth on paper had gone up, but nothing had come in. The Supreme Court sided with her, and in doing it, the court wrote a definition of income that still governs everything today. Income, it said, is a gain you have realized, separated from the assets received in your hands. A rise in the value of something you still own is not income. It's just a bigger number on a page. That idea has a name. Tax lawyers call it realization, and it is the hinge the whole story turns on. You are taxed when you realize a gain. When you sell, not when you merely have it. A year later, in 1921, Congress added the second piece. It decided that when you do sell, that money shouldn't be taxed like a paycheck. It should be taxed less. The first special rate for capital gains was 12.5%, at a time when the top rate on ordinary wages was nearly 60%. So, by 1921, both halves of the deal were law. Money you make from owning things is taxed only when you choose to sell. And when you do, it's taxed at a lower rate than money you make from working. None of that was inevitable. There is no law of nature that says a gain on a stock deserves gentler treatment than an hour of your labor. These were choices made by specific people more than 100 years ago, and we have been living inside them ever since. Which answers the question we started with. Why does the system tax your money the moment you earn it, and Musk's almost never? Not because the rules treat him as a special person, because the rules treat his kind of money, owned, unsold, unrealized, as something that, in the eyes of law, hasn't quite happened yet. Your wages are realized the instant you earn them. The gain is already in your hands, so the tax lands on the contact. His isn't. So it doesn't. But that creates a problem of its own. If you never sell it, you never pay. Fine, except you still have to live. You cannot buy a house, a jet, or a whole social media company with stock you refuse to sell. So how does a man with $1 trillion in shares and almost no salary pay for his life without ever tripping the wire that triggers that tax? The strategy is well known enough to have a nickname. Buy, borrow, die. But the nickname hides as much as it reveals. So let's take it apart one piece at a time. Buy. The first step is the one we have already met. You buy things that go up, stock mostly, and then do nothing. You hold. That's the entire first move. Because of realization, an asset you hold and never sell produces no taxable income, no matter how enormous the gain on paper. The morning SpaceX went public, Musk's fortune rose by something like $180 billion in a matter of hours. As far as the IRS is concerned, he earned nothing. He hadn't sold. There was nothing to tax. Now, you might be thinking you are in the same game. And in a small way, you are. If the home you live in has gone up in value, you are sitting on an unrealized gain too. But here's the difference. For most families, the one big thing that appreciates in the house, and on the house, you pay tax every single year. Property tax. It lands whether you ever sell or not. For the very wealthy, the house is a rounding error. Their fortune isn't stock. And the stock you can hold untouched for 50 years and never pay a cent. But didn't Musk pay just an enormous tax bill? $11 billion, the largest in American history. He did in 2021. And the reason is the exception that proves the rule. Back in 2012, he had been granted a block of stock options and they were about to expire. If he did nothing, they had vanished, worthless. So he was forced to exercise them to realize the gain all at once. And around $11 billion came due. He did not volunteer. The clock ran out. In 2015, Musk paid about $68,000 in federal income tax. In 2017, about $65,000. In 2018, nothing at all. Zero. In a stretch when his net worth was climbing by billions. The $11 billion wasn't a change of heart. It's what it costs when the system finally forces your hand. The rest of the time, the meter barely runs. And it is not a Musk specialty. In 2021, ProPublica obtained the actual IRS records of the wealthiest Americans across 25 richest men in the country over a recent 5-year stretch. Their combined wealth grew by $401 billion. The federal income tax they paid on that growth was $13.6 billion, measured against how much richer they became. That's a rate of 3.4%. Warren Buffett was the lowest of the group, 0.1%. For every $100 his fortune grew, about a dime. Jeff Bezos paid no federal income tax at all in 2 separate years. Now, that 3.4% figure counts the gains on paper, the unrealized wealth, as if it is war income. By the law's own definition, it isn't. On the conventional measure, counting only what they actually sold, those same billionaires paid closer to 16%. I'm giving you both numbers on purpose because the gap between them is the whole story. The rate looks tiny because the system refuses to count the very thing that's making them rich. Every dollar you earn counts as income the moment it lands. There doesn't. Not until they decided it does. That isn't them breaking the rules. It's the rules working exactly as written. And there's a second advantage. For the rare moments when their wealth does get sold, a long-term capital gain is taxed at 20% at the top. About 24 once you add the surtax on investment income. Wages top nearly 37, and that's before payroll tax, which is the quiet part. Every dollar of your wages up to about $185,000 pays into Social Security. Capital gains pay nothing. Your paycheck funds the retirement system. $1 trillion in stock funds none of it. Borrow. But selling is expensive way, and the very rich rarely take it. Because there is a way to turn stock into spending money without parting with a single share. You borrow against it. If you hold tens of billions in stock, banks will lend against it gladly. A line of credit secured by your shares, often at rates ordinary people never get offered. And a loan isn't income. You can spend it on anything, on no tax, and never sell a thing. Musk does this in open. Tesla's own filings with the SEC show he has pledged around 236 million of his shares, was somewhere nearly $80 billion as collateral for personal loans. Pledged, not sold. Except the economists who have gone deepest into the actual data think the borrowing is oversold. So the borrowing is the visible part, the part that makes headline. But it isn't the engine. The engine is the last step, and it's the one nobody likes to say out loud. Die. Here is what makes the whole thing permanent. When you die and your heir inherit your stock, the law does something remarkable. It resets the clock. For tax purposes, your heirs are treated as if they bought those shares at their value on the day you die. Every dollar of gain that built up across your entire life, all of it untaxed, simply vanishes. It's not deferred to them, it is erased. It has a nickname among estate lawyers, the step up, less politely, the angel of death loophole. By one estimate, it costs the federal government about $40 billion a year. So, follow it to the end. You hold and the gains go untaxed because you never sell. You borrow against them to live, tax-free, and then you die. And the tax that was supposedly just deferred until someday never comes due. Someday never arrives. The plan was never to avoid the tax. It was to outlive it. And this is not a handful of people. Add up every unrealized gain in the country, you get something like $40 trillion. Trillions of it, held by a silver at the very top. Count those giants the way a paycheck is counted, and the effective tax rate on all the gains piled up in America over the last few decades drops to around 5%. Take any one piece away and it collapses. Without realization, the gains get taxed as they grow. Without the lower rate, selling stinks. Without the step up, the deferred bill finally lands. Leave all three and $1 trillion move through a whole life, and in the next generation, having met a tax almost never. That's the machine. It isn't hiding the tax collector. It was built so the tax collector never arrives. So, what do you do with this? Normally, this is where I'll hand you a list. 3 things to do this week. There isn't one. No personal trick closes this gap. You cannot apply a stepped-up basis to your salary. There isn't life hacks the rest of us are missing. They are a feature of owning so much capital, you never have to sell it. If you have to sell to live, None of it is available to you. That's the most people. That's the point. So the question isn't what you should do. It's what, if anything, the country should do. And there the disagreement is real. Not about the mechanics of which both sides accept, but about whether they are a problem worth fixing. The case for leaving it alone is stronger than it sounds. A gain you haven't sold isn't money. It's a number that can fall as fast as it rose. Tax it, and you may be taxing wealth that's gone by spring. Most of what people own isn't a stock with a price on a screen. It's farms, houses, private businesses that nobody can value cleanly every April. And the rich already pay the largest share of the income tax there is. Tax what hasn't been sold, this side says, and you punish building things, and you may not even be allowed to. 2 years ago, in a case called Moore, 4 Supreme Court justices signaled they believe income has to be realized before the government can tax it. The other side answers, then leave the farms and the family businesses alone. Tax only the liquid, publicly traded billions of the few thousand richest people, whose holdings are priced to the penny every second the market is open. And they already pay the most. Sidesteps the number that matters, measured against the how fast their wealth is growing and what they pay around to nothing. The progressive system that grips everything else simply loosens its hold at the very top and lets go. And the first side has an answer. Make a founder pay tax on a gain he never cashed in, and you may force him to sell all of his company to cover the bill. And in a year when the stock drops, would the government write him a refund? Start taxing value that was never sold. And the real question is where it stops. This year, it's a billionaire stock. What keeps it from reaching your house or your retirement account 30 years from now? Underneath the whole argument is a question neither side can settle. Is a gain you haven't sold really income? America has answered no for over a century, and the Supreme Court may be about to make that answer permanent. There have been real attempts to answer it the other way. A plan to make households worth more than $100 million pay a minimum of 20%, counting the gains on paper. Another to mark the billionaire's holding to market every year. Ending the step at death, which on its own would raise an estimated $500 billion over a decade. None has passed. And after more, even if one did, it might not survive the court. It's tempting to make this fight between left and right. It isn't one. The people who live by these rules don't split among party lines, Buffett or Bezos, Thiel or Soros, a bipartisan club. Both parties have held the pen for 100 years, and both have left the ink exactly where it was. Because the split that actually matters here was never political. It's the one this whole video has been about. The people whose money is mostly capital, and the people whose money is mostly a paycheck. So, go back to that paycheck, the number you earned, and the smaller number that reached you. The gap is between income tax, social security, and Medicare, taken at the top before you ever saw it. For most of your life, that line probably felt like a small theft, or a mistake, or quite proof that you should be doing better. It is none of those things. It is the system working precisely as it was designed to in 1920 and in 1921 and every year since. Your money is the kind that gets taxed the instant it exists. Nothing to defer, nothing to hold, and nothing to borrow against. It arrives already taxed because that is what earned money does. And his? We started by asking whether that trillionaire ever get taxed at all. Now you have the answer. Held, borrowed against, and finally wiped clean the day he dies. Now you have the answer. Held, borrowed against, and finally wiped clean the day he dies. The honest answer to when does it finally get taxed is maybe never. Not deferred, erased. You're not behind because you are careless or undisciplined or bad with money. You might be all of those things. Most of us are, some of the times. But that is not why the math feels rigged. The math feels rigged because you are playing with the one kind of money the system was designed to tax the moment it appears. He is playing with the other kind of. Same country, same code, two different games. You can't change which game you were dealt into by watching a video. But you can stop reading that line on your paycheck as a verdict on you. It was never a measure of how well you played. It was a measure of what kind of money you were playing against. Two kinds of money. You earn yours and it meets a tax the instant it exists. His earns itself, quietly untouched for as long as he decides to hold it, which might be forever. That isn't a law of nature. Somebody wrote it down more than 100 years ago. And every year since, we have chosen to leave it exactly where it is. If this changed how you read the gap on your own paycheck, subscribe. I take apart the rules behind the money and who they really written for every week. I'll see you in the next one.